So, namaste everybody, and welcome to this Thursday night program. We're going to be having a little meditation, and our talk, our philosophy wisdom talk, our yoga wisdom talk this week is going to be about Christmas. With Christmas coming up, we thought we'd do a talk about Christmas, different ways of looking at Christmas. And then after that we're going to have a little chant, and at the end, along with our chant, there's a little song I'm going to sing, a little Christmas song actually. It was a song written by John Lennon, and so I didn't really know the song. I just thought of it probably, about an hour ago before we were due to record this session. So I've only had a little time to rehearse it. But anyway, so we're going to sing that song and have a little chant, a little Christmas theme this week. So as usual, before we do our talk, we're going to have a little breath awareness and meditation just for a couple of minutes, just to try and calm the mind and tune us in a little bit, settle us down so that we can, when we go to the talk, we might be able to focus a little better. Okay, so if everybody would like to have their eyes closed, and just begin by putting your attention onto your breathing, and try to make your inward breath through your nose. So breathing in through the nose and just watching your breath. We don't need to really do anything other than that. And we're going to just focus on our breathing. So the inward breath, as you're focusing on the breath, just notice the enlivening, refreshing nature of the inward breath and the relaxing nature of the outward breath. So the inward breath, revitalizing, feeling that breath, imagining the breath just spreading throughout your whole body, revitalizing the body. And the outward breath is very relaxing. We're breathing out, along with the toxins, we're breathing out any tension we may be carrying. So just let your outward breath drag out any tension. And one of the nice things about this breath focus is that you'll be able to notice, even after just a couple of breaths, you'll be able to notice that your breathing is slowing down automatically, and it's becoming deeper automatically without any real effort. Just simply by placing your attention onto the breath, it'll turn into this very relaxing exercise. Inward breath, revitalizing, the outward breath, relaxing. And this is a practice that you can do for an extended amount of time, if you like. In any stressful moment during the day. We all know it actually, it's a type of cliche. Whenever anybody's stressed out, we all know, take a deep breath. So yoga teachings often reflect our natural tendencies. So this is just one example of that. So like I said, we can, in your own time, some other time, you can do this practice for, a longer period of time if you like. Tonight, we're just going to do a shorter version. So we're going to go straight into, from this point, after your breathing becomes very relaxed, we can go into a meditation and focus on one of the beautiful yoga mantras called, this particular mantra, Gauranga, and it means the golden one. So the idea of a mantra is just to focus on the sound vibration. We can either be hearing it from somebody else or a recording, or we can be making the sound ourselves. But the main point with this meditation is to just be hearing the sound, allowing the sound to wash over your mind and your heart, and it'll have a very calming and purifying effect on your whole being. So we'll just do this, focus on this mantra for a few minutes. What we'll do, you can hear it in the background. Some of my friends are doing this practice. And what we'll do, we'll breathe in together. If you're at home and you'd like to join in with this, we'll breathe in together, and then on an outward breath you can all say Gauranga with a long drawn out breath together. And we'll just do this, probably 3 or 4 minutes. So after this one you can hear in the background. Okay, so breathing in. Concentration on the sound is just very relaxed. We don't need to struggle with this, just be very relaxed focus. Let's just do one more. And we'll just put our attention back onto the breath again now. And the inward breath revitalizing, the outward breath relaxing. And we'll just finish where we started, just with this breath focus. Another couple of inward breaths like that, feeling the rejuvenating nature of the inward breath and the relaxing of the outward breath. Okay. So I hope everybody had a nice little experience with that short little practice. So we're going to go straight into our talk now on Christmas. I think it's on the promo, it's called the real meaning of Christmas. So yeah, we'll be coming to that, and like I said, after that we'll finish with a little chanting. So, Christmas, it means so many different things to many people these days. You know, one of the, you know, I'm nearly 70 years old now, but when I was a kid, Christmas was more or less, you know, in Australia where I'm, you know, living and broadcasting from today, it was more or less a universal thing. You know, everybody recognised what Christmas was. We knew what the word meant. It referred to, you know, the birthday of Jesus. And so it was always a big event in the Christian calendar, Christmas Day, of course, and you know, it was a time of, you know, different people celebrated in different ways. In more recent times, you know, it seems to be the case that a lot of people don't like the word Christmas. You know, like it was very common in olden times, I'm going to say olden times, you know, we're talking maybe 30, 40 years ago, it's not too olden. But, you know, it was quite common for people to greet, you know, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, things like that. Even in the supermarkets or anywhere, people would say it. Just total strangers, people you didn't know, Merry Christmas. It was a kind of seasonal greeting kind of thing. And, you know, I think it still happens to some extent these days like that. But it's a little bit different in some places. In the United States especially, I think in Australia a little bit, but in the United States especially, you know, there's this big movement where you deliberately do not say Merry Christmas anymore. You say Happy Holidays. I think it's, you know, coming to Australia a little bit. We always seem to catch on to the American trends sooner or later. You know, the other day, I didn't know this for a long time. You know, I only found out recently there's this thing called Halloween they have in Australia now. And I'm thinking, wow, Halloween in Australia. I knew that was an American thing, but I didn't know it happened in Australia. Yes, apparently it's a thing in Australia now too. So we generally pick up the trends, and this Happy Holidays is one of them. And I'm just mentioning it briefly because it's done a lot of the times as a almost like a not a political, like a type of statement that I'm not going to say Merry Christmas because I'm against this word, and I'm against the concept of Jesus' birth and the whole, everything that's flows on from that. I'm against spirituality, therefore I'm not going to say Merry Christmas, I'm going to say Happy Holidays. So they take the holiday, and that's okay. But we're not going to have the Christmas part. So they say Happy Holidays is a kind of a statement, you know. Hey, there you go, all you spiritual people. I'm not going to say that, I'm going to say Happy Holidays. And then sometimes the the people who are into followers of Jesus and so on, they'll sort of stick it back kind of thing, go, Merry Christmas, like, and it sometimes turns into a little bit of a battle of the ideas, and it's all, you know, and the battle's on with this kind of code that people, you know, put out. So anyway, just mentioning that, I think probably a lot of people are aware of this, but it's interesting to observe, you know, as much as possible. It's good not to try to, you know, get into that kind of thing. It's you know, in my life, I'm not into, you know, fighting with people who want to say Happy Holidays. That's fine. I'm going to say Merry Christmas, but I'll do it in a kind of try to do it in an inoffensive way. So, you know, there's other things that are going on in relation to Christmas. I remember reading once, in relation to the meaning of Christmas, you know, people say that, you know, oh, December 25th, it's not actually the birthday of Jesus at all. You know, the 25th of December was traditionally way, way back in olden times, really olden times. It was a type of celebration occurred on that day because of the winter solstice. In the northern hemisphere, that was the sun wouldn't. That was the northern winter, and the sun would reach its lowest point around about that time, December 25th, and from there on, it would start to get into spring. The sun would come back and into spring. So there's a big celebration in those days. Those solstices were big events in olden times because people's livelihoods depended on it. You know, they're struggling through a long, dark winter, and then all of a sudden the sun's starting to come back, and so this was a time of joy and celebration, and it was a big celebration. So what they're saying is that the Christians stole this celebration and turned it into you know, the birthday of Jesus, where it really wasn't. But again, the reason I mention it now because, you know, it seems to be a very big deal, you know, this date thing for a lot of people. But the point I wanted to make today is that it doesn't really matter. You know, even if what they say is true, and, you know, I haven't researched the exact date, so I don't really know. It hasn't really bothered me whether it is the actual correct date or not. And I'll even go so far as to say, even if it was, you know, that the Christians did adopt this winter solstice celebration and, you know, sort of merged it in with the birthday of Jesus, you know, I'm fine with that too. It's not really a problem. It's no big deal, because one could say, you can understand why they did it. The birth of Jesus itself was signifying, in later times people understood the significance of who Jesus was and the wonderful nature of his teachings. And so, you know, looking back, we can see, yeah, the birthday of Jesus was like a spring as well. It was a new beginning. It was a new, there was a whole new era was ushered in, just like the solstice ushered in a new beginning in a material sense. So, you know, we can be aware of these things and not worry about it too much. To me, again, whether it's the right day or not, it doesn't really matter. You know, the main thing is that, you know, once a year or more, even if possible, we remember, you know, the birthday of Jesus, and we use that as an opportunity to focus on his teachings and his life and the significance of it and so on. So if it's the right day or the wrong day, let's not worry about it too much. So what is actually the significance of Jesus' birth? Who was he? You know, there's it's very interesting that even, you know, I read this book by, you know, a big atheist commentator, And you know, these people are always very down on spirituality and say it's bad and so on. And so I read this book, and I came across an interesting, passage in the book, and this person actually praised Jesus. And he was saying that, Jesus wanted, if I can remember the quote roughly, anyway, paraphrasing, he was saying basically that Jesus was one of the great ethical innovators in all history. That's how he said it. So I thought, oh wow, this is really nice. Even you've got someone who's an atheist who's recognising, at least a part, the wonderful nature at least a part of Jesus' teaching. Of course, he rejects the spiritual side of Jesus' teaching, but that's okay. At least he had some good to say. So, as far as so there's, like we're saying, there's so many different opinions out there about who Jesus was and, the value of his teachings in different ways. And so I wanted to, I'm going to try to not let this talk go on too long, but I wanted to focus on, one particular aspect of Jesus' teaching, and as we do this, those of you who are followers of yoga and you're tuning into this station tuning into this channel expecting a talk on yoga in some way, I'll try and explain how the teaching of Jesus is actually very, very non-different actually than the core teachings of yoga. So we'll come to that, in just a moment or two. But I just wanted to mention, firstly, something that my teacher, I heard from my teacher many, many years ago, and he was saying that, so many, in the wide world of Christianity, we know there's so many different, branches of Christianity, and they all have their little different, they all accept Jesus as, very special, but they all have their different understandings of who he is, and then, they focus on different aspects of his teaching and so on, and they have their little independent views and so on. But one of the things my teacher mentioned, he said that so many Christians, and I'm not saying this, please, I don't want to say this as a criticism, it may seem like it, I'm not, I'm just explaining this to, hopefully just to make it, bring forth this very interesting point that my teacher made. And he was saying that, there's so many Christians do not even understand what the basic teachings of Jesus were. And he was saying, for example, if any of you out there know anything about Christianity, you'd know, there's a word called salvation that is, thrown around quite a lot. Jesus saves, and, you're going to be saved and this and that. They talk like that and use this word salvation. In yoga, we use the word, quite often, we use the word liberation instead. Liberation meaning, liberation from the entrapment of material life, sort of thing. So it's a different kind, you can use either word, salvation, liberation, and meaning that we attain transcendence, we attain spiritual realization, spiritual life, which is, on a different plane to material life. So they have this word, so what is Christianity all about? And so many of the Christians use the word salvation, so salvation. And my teacher was saying, they all say it means salvation. They don't realise that it actually means that Christianity is about something else. It's not about salvation. It's about love for the Supreme Soul, or love for God. And there was this incident, this is very clearly mentioned in the Bible where, some of the Pharisees, the priests of the time were asking Jesus, said, what is it all about? What are all the spiritual texts all about? They're referring to the Old Testament because that was the scripture of the day. There was no New Testament at the time of Jesus. It didn't exist. What the scriptures was the Old Testament. So they're saying, what does this all mean? Because if anybody's ever read the Old Testament, you'll know it's very, there's a lot of different things in there. There's a lot of history, there's a lot of ritual, there's some philosophy, and it's a big mishmash a lot of the time, and it can be very confusing to anybody who reads it. And so they're asking Jesus, what's the meaning of all this? Summarize it for us. And he said, it all boils down to two things. Love the Supreme Soul with all your heart and all your mind and your entire being. And the second important point is that you love your neighbour as much as you love yourself. And he says, everything else is subservient to these two teachings. So for anybody who reads this, we can immediately appreciate, love for the Supreme. This is the teaching of Jesus. But just mentioning, again, what my teacher said, that so many Christians, they do not understand this. So many people, I won't say Christians, just say so many people who read the Bible, miss this point. And so he said they all think it's all about salvation, and they don't realise, and we'll explain the distinction in just a moment. So I sometimes people come to your door, different people, want to teach different aspects of spirituality. So one time some people came to my door and I knew exactly who they were, and I knew they'd want to, be, speaking to me, giving me their ideas about spiritual life and so on. And sometimes I talk to them, sometimes I don't when they knock on the door, but this time I talked to them, and I thought I'd be really cute and clever, and I thought, okay, I'll test what my teacher said on these guys, see if what he said is true. And so after they were talking to me for a little while, telling me about Jesus and God and this and that, and I'm going, okay, so what's the summary of this whole thing you're trying to tell me? What's the essence of it? And they shot back straight away, salvation. And I went, wow, that's exactly what my teacher said. So many of these people who read the Bible think it's all about getting saved, salvation. And of course he said, no, it's not about that. It's about love for the Supreme. So the distinction is, you could say, okay, what's the distinction? And the distinction is this: when you talk about salvation and the desire for salvation, you're talking about a self-centered motive. It's all about something for me, isn't it? I want this particular thing, I want this, I want that, and in this case of spiritual, I want salvation, I want to be saved. Me, I'm the... But if we go back to what Jesus' statement was, it wasn't that at all. It was something, the opposite of that. It was selfless. We all know what love is. Love means not wanting for yourself. It means giving. To love means to give, right? This is the true meaning of love. Not, I love you and what can I get? Love means, I love you, what can I do for you? So, I won't go on and on about it too much. I'm hoping, that that explanation was sufficient to give everybody an idea of, some of the different attitudes and different understandings that people have in relation to Christianity. For me, that was really, very special distinction, this distinction between selfless love and selfish salvationism. It was a really special distinction for me, because in my early years I grew up with Christianity, with a Christian background, just like so many of you who are watching, I'm sure. And there was always this talk about salvation and don't you want to be saved and save this and save that. Salvation, salvation, save. Very little talk about, love for God, love for the Supreme. And so when I didn't know in those days, but looking back, I could see, wow, yes, this is how it was. A lot of people didn't make the distinction. So I felt very fortunate to be able to hear about this distinction from my teacher. So I hope, everybody will, see the importance of this distinction. So another thing that happened, that was quite significant in my time when I first came into contact with yoga teaching and yoga philosophy and so on, was the connection between the name Christ and Krishna. So anybody who follows yoga philosophy or yoga understanding will understand the word Krishna is a name for the Supreme Soul. Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita and so on. Very famous personality in yoga history and philosophy. Krishna, the Supreme Person, the Supreme Soul. And when I grew up in the world of Christianity, this is way before, people in the West even knew of the word yoga. I'm talking, or very few, in the 1960s. And, I was raised in such a way that, and this was quite common, that there were distinctions. People saw distinctions, that Christianity's over here and that's the good religion, and over here you've got Islam, and then you've got Hinduism and Buddhism, and we didn't really know much about it, and there wasn't much education about those practices and lifestyles. But the main point I'm trying to make is it was explained to us as these are really distinct. Christianity is the one, and Hinduism's just very strange, and Islam is whatever. These attitudes are not so much there anymore. People have become much more broad-minded and well-educated about all these matters. But back in those days, I didn't understand the relationship between all these things. And later, again, it was pointed out to me by my teacher that the word Christ and Krishna were actually the same word, and that was like, whoa, that was a big mind-blowing event as well, because immediately, all the barriers kind of disappear. You mean the most important personality in Christianity has got the same name as the most important personality in Hinduism? Yeah. And, and of course, the pronunciation, they say Christ. Oh, Christ is different to Krishna. No, actually, the original pronunciation of Christ was not Christ, it was Christo. In Latin, Christu, Christus, and Greek, Christos, and Christ, the Chris was the main part of the word Christ. And as we can easily see, Krishna, it's the same word. And I heard that the Christ came, there's different opinions on how it got changed into, the pronunciation became Christ, and that was relatively recent, only maybe 500 years ago. And some people say it came from an Irish version of saying Christ. They say Christ, Jesus Christ, like that, and that's where the Christ came from. It may be the case, it may not be the case, but in any event, Christus, Christa, Christos, that is the correct pronunciation. So this was a big, revelation for me. Again, I think it's something that's quite common knowledge these days. Back in, when I was a kid, it wasn't common knowledge. It was, wow. But these days, I'm sure many of you who are tuning in would have heard of this. But so this is why, for example, where, even though I'm a follower of yoga and follower of the Bhagavad Gita, I'm spending a bit of time talking about Christmas and Jesus Christ or Jesus Christos, because I've been fortunate enough to become aware of the very close relationship in these two, they call them religions, so I won't use that word, we'll say two different spiritual paths, to the point where if a person understands the essence of both these paths, they'll see that they're actually, one and the same. And for example, Jesus says, love God. In the Bhagavad Gita, you say, love the Supreme Soul. It's exactly the same point. And in the Bhagavad Gita, we read a little bit about the distinction between this idea of selfless love and selfish salvationism or liberation. So in the yoga text, it's described that, while liberation is a laudable and proper desire in a sense, it's good to be aware of, the spirituality, the transcendental reality, and to try to attain it and try to be liberated. That's good, but even better than that is to become aware of the Supreme Soul and to become aware of this path of bhakti or love for the Supreme Soul. That's actually a superior goal or aim. But they both go together, and of course, a person who does follow the path of bhakti yoga, trying to develop their love for the Supreme, they're not bereft. In other words, they achieve this thing called liberation or salvation automatically. It's not like they miss out on that. That's attained already, but they achieve, a further, an even higher goal. So I just wanted to, finish the talk with another, kind of like very significant understanding that I received from my teacher. I wouldn't know anything without him. I learned so many things from my teacher, and that's in connection with this, the idea that, all the different spiritual paths are distinct and separated. And, like I was saying, if a person just researches even a little bit, they'll be able to see that all the different spiritual paths, any genuine spiritual path, they're all aiming to the same place. And whether we study one particular text or we focus on the teachings of one particular text or another, it's not really that important. The main point is that one way or another we understand, this idea of love for God, love for the Supreme Soul. And of course, Jesus is very famous for putting this teaching forward, just far beyond all the ethical teachings that he gave the world, and that even atheists are appreciative of. Far beyond that, his real legacy was this teaching of love for the Supreme Soul, love for God. And like we're saying, you'll find this teaching in Islam, you'll find this teaching in the Bhagavad Gita, in the yoga texts and so on. So there's no need for anybody to, see all these distinctions, Christianity here, Islam here, this thing over here and that. And, I'm happy to say, in a sense, that, even in the short space of my lifetime, this understanding is actually increasing more and more, that there are no real distinctions, and it doesn't, whether one chooses to pursue spiritual life by focusing on one particular text or another, that's their individual affair, and we cannot say one's right and one's wrong. If a person is, sincere about their trying to develop their love for the Supreme, then that's going to work out for them. There's no doubt about it. So I just wanted to finish off. I've got a nice quote here in this regard by not my teacher's not by my teacher, but by his teacher, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. And he was saying that sectarianism, or, the idea of having to join the right group or team, like I've got to become a Christian, otherwise, trouble. Or I've got to become a Muslim, otherwise trouble. Or I've got to be a follower of the Bhagavad Gita, otherwise trouble. And he was saying, no, this kind of idea that you have to join some group or the right group is really not only incorrect, and it can be very destructive, because it just promotes divisiveness, right? It's interesting, spirituality, which is supposed to bring people together, if it's misunderstood, it can just keep people apart. So he was making this point about sectarianism being, not good. So, and just to clarify that, it doesn't mean that, we can't have, we're not always absolutely alone. It doesn't mean we can't, have some society and friendship and so on, and association. People need that for spiritual development. We need support, and not only that, it's just nice to associate with people who are like-minded, who are spiritually focused, just like ourselves. But the point he was making was that if this association morphs into this sectarianism, where we start to think, oh, this is my team, and I'm on the right team, and someone else is not on the right team, then this is not good for our spiritual development, and not only that, it's not good for the world in general to have all this divisive spirit going on. So I'll just read this quote from Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami when he's talking in this way. It's not exactly what I was talking about, but he's referring to it in the context of different spiritual texts. This idea of joining the right group, or reading the right book. You can read the Bible, but you can't read the Quran or the Bhagavad Gita, and so on and so forth. So he's, putting this idea to rest. The test of any spiritual text is whether or not it helps a person develop their love for the Supreme Soul. If you find that by following the principles of some particular text, that you are developing your love for the Supreme, then it is perfect. It doesn't matter whether these principles are from the Bible or the Quran or the Bhagavad Gita. We have to see what is the result of following these principles. Don't try to understand whether this particular text is good and this other one is bad. No. Try to understand by the result. If you see the fruit, then it is first class. So, that's, one of those very special quotes that I always like to remember. And, I hope everybody can appreciate that also, that this is the kind of thinking that will overcome this divisiveness that sometimes we see going on in the name of spirituality. So we'll leave it at that for the talk, and we're just going to, finish off with a few minutes of chanting. We're actually today we'll chant, one of my favourite mantras, the Hare Krishna mantra or the Maha mantra. And but before we do that, I'll just want to sing this Christmas song by, like I was saying, with John Lennon. By John Lennon. I never, I've only rehearsed it about 3 or 4 times, so if I make a few mistakes or hit the wrong key, you'll know why. So I'll just sing I won't do the whole song, just a couple of the nice verses. It's a really beautiful song, actually. And then we'll sing some of the Hare Krishna mantra to the same tune. So this is Christmas. I'm sorry, I'm going to look away from the camera because I'm reading the words. I don't know the song. So if you like, you can have your eyes closed while we're doing this. So this is Christmas. And what have you done? Another year over, and a new one just begun. And so this is Christmas. I hope you have fun. The near and the dear one, the old and the young. And a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Let's hope it's a good one, without any fear. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And so this is Christmas. I hope you have fun. The near and the dear one, the old and the young. Very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Let's hope it's a good one without any fear. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, so namaste everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I hope you had a nice time with this little session this morning. And Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you.